Thanks, everybody, and welcome to Career Conversations, Communication and Media Studies Pathways. My name is Tammy Kim Newman, Associate Director with Employer and Alumni Engagement with their Career Center, and I feel very honored to be co-moderating this session today with the Undergraduate Program Director, Robert Hanen, with the Department of Communication and Media Studies. Thank you all for joining today. So just some quick housekeeping items. We'll ask yourself to please keep yourself on mute during the official moderated portion. So we'll start off with a few formal questions to the panelists, and then we'll open it up to all the students here for Q&A. So feel free to use the reaction button, or you can type your question into the chat and we can ask on your behalf. Or if no one is speaking at the moment and you want to just jump in and turn on your audio, and if you feel comfortable sharing your video, that's fine as well during the student portion. So before I turn it over to Robert, I'd just like to do our land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge that York University recognizes that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. I hope that all of us joining from different territories right now will take that time to acknowledge the lands on which we are joining. And I'd like to acknowledge that as a first generation child of immigrants, that I have also benefited from settler colonialism. And so in my role, I commit to learning, unlearning when it comes to reconciliation and decolonization, when it comes to the work that I do and to serving this community. Thank you. So I'll pass it over to Rob to do some brief reminders or opening comments, and then to kind of introduce the panelists quickly.
Great. Thanks so much, Tammy, and thanks so much for organizing this. It's really wonderful. And I'm not going to say a lot because we have 5 panelists, which is a phenomenal number and not a lot of time. So I want them to have the chance to share their experiences with you as much as possible. I'm Rob Hanen. I'm the undergrad program director in communication and media studies. So I want to welcome everybody, both our students and anybody else here as well. And this is a great opportunity. I know it's really hard often, and I talk with students about that a lot, the challenge of kind of imagining where you're going to go in the future and what you might do as a career and what kind of pathways you might have. And I think we have a really great and diverse range of panelists here who've done amazing things and lots of amazing things. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about it as well. And hopefully it gives you a sense. They're all alumni of communication and media studies at York, although it was called communication studies earlier. And before that was called something else. I forget now. But you can see from their experiences, right, that our program opens up a lot of doors and kind of different career paths that are there. So it's hopefully this really inspires you. And I really want to thank our panelists. Like, it's really incredibly generous for you to offer your time to us and to come in and help mentor our students and to give back to York. So we really appreciate it. And it's really important for our students. So I'm not going to say anything in detail about any of them, but I just want to welcome Zainab Gular-Tuck, Shireen Osborne, Janet Park, Leanne Khazanchi, and I'm not sure if I see Maisha Chowdhury, but if she's not here yet, then hopefully we'll show up. And what we're going to do is just ask a few questions to start off and get the panelists to say a little bit more about themselves and to talk about their experiences. And then we'll hopefully open it up. And, you know, as Tammy said, you know, feel free to ask questions. You can put them in the chat. You can put your hand up and ask them in person. And anything that you want to know about specifically from specific panelists or from the panel as a whole would be great to hear. So I'm going to just stop there and turn it over to Tammy, I think, to ask the first question, perhaps.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Rob. So what we'll do is maybe for the sake of organization, maybe we'll go kind of left to right alphabetically. So Janet, Leanne, Shireen, and Zainab, we'll kind of go in that order if that's okay for the first few questions. So for the first question, we'd love all of you to answer. If you can just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself and a quick overview of your career.
Sure, I guess I'm first up. Hi, my name is Janet Park, and I am currently head of communications for a software company called Sentry. We do error and application performance monitoring. So if you are a software developer, we help you find any errors in your code or any performance issues for your applications. So we work with companies like Disney, Airbnb, Spotify, and whatnot. In my current role, I oversee all internal and external communications, really focused on increasing brand awareness and market penetration. Before this, I was head of communications for what we called the Americas and Oceania at TikTok. So I was overseeing a team that managed Canada, all Latin America, including Brazil and Spanish-speaking markets, along with New Zealand and Australia. A lot of our areas were focused on celebrating all of the joy and good that happens on TikTok, a lot of crisis communications and Senate hearings along the way, but truly kind of a remarkable experience seeing that rocket ship really take off. Prior to that, I was head of public affairs at WeWork for Canada. And then before that, I was actually head of product communications at Shopify, pre, during, and post IPO, kind of starting there as the first PR hire and really kind of molding that department. And then right after I graduated from York University, I did do my postgraduate at Seneca. And I spent close to 7 years, always on the agency side, always in tech at various companies down in New York City. So I made my way back home to Canada and glad I'm here.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Leanne. I'm a corporate communications and public affairs manager at TD. I've been with TD for 6 years. I've worked in different roles, all in the communication space, but also delved a bit into the employer brand, employee value proposition, financial communications lines of businesses. I currently work supporting the CHRO of TD in public affairs, and so lots of crisis comms and PR there as well. Prior to TD, I worked in various industries. I was sort of at a point in my career where I knew I wanted to do comms. It's what I studied, but I wanted to test different industries. And so I tried gourmet. I tried government for a bit. I worked at the Ontario Energy Board. I worked in software tech. I was a ghostwriter for an MP, and so I did various different career stints, all in the comm space. I did my comms degree at York, also followed that with the postgrad PR at Seneca, and then did a master's in digital marketing. I was really keen on understanding the quantitative side of it all, especially as all the social media apps were starting to come up at the time. And then I sealed it off with an MBA. So I did a master's of business admin in Australia to seal it off with a business degree.
Hi, I'm Shireen Osborne. I graduated from York with a double major in English and Communication Studies. Since then, I've worked in private as well as the public sector. I've worked in financial services and career services. At one point, I ran my own business and went back to public sector where I currently am. I've worked for the government of Canada across a number of departments for over 15 years now. I'm currently a senior program advisor with Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada. I work, even though passport is not in the title, I actually work with a passport program. So we're currently developing an online application. So a lot of my work is centered around communications, change management, employee engagement. I also worked in corporate communications at Service Canada, where it was a lot of activities around ministerial events, intranet, coding. So quite a number of different tasks in that role as advisor and consultant. Thanks.
Tammy, I can't remember if I'm next or not. I'm just
You
going to
got
go with it.
Zainab.
I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah, you are.
So many things in common with these amazing humans. I'm Zainab. I'm a Turkish Canadian producer, journalist, editor, and equity advocate. So I got my BA when it was called Mass Comms. So that's what it was called before it was called Comms. Double major in comms and sociology in 2002. I wish I didn't reveal that. But I definitely put my comms degree to good use and really tried a gamut of things. I pretty much attacked it with a trifecta of client-side marketing, media, and PR across my entire career. And I started really in the boardrooms of PR firms and then moved into kind of the newsrooms of media outlets, into the huddles of kind of the tech sector. And now I'm still in the tech sector, but very much in the social impact space. And I'm even pulling up a chair for myself as a producer in the film and TV space with my own company. So as you can tell, very varied experience, but very much a skill development and being able to use all the skills that I've built up over the years in comm strategy, in community engagement, and all the goodies, and I put them to good use every single day in the work that I get to do. So I've worked with Microsoft, I worked for Lonely Planet, Time Out, Sunwing, Rogers, oh my God, I'm going all the way back. And then I've collaborated with Chorus Entertainment, New York Times, Washington Post, Hearst Magazine, across many different markets in at least 3 continents. And I've worked cross-functionally with teams across the world. That's probably one of my favorite parts about the job, is that I get to work with different people from all over the world, and all everywhere I get to go, I get to use everything that I've learned along the way. So that's kind of me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing that overview. Incredible journey so far. So now maybe we can take a deeper dive into each of your current roles and maybe some of the typical duties. I know probably every day differs, but maybe to give the listeners a sense of kind of some of the common things or tasks you might be working on right now. So similarly, we'll go Janet, Leanne, Shireen, and Zainab. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so I probably do the closest to what most people would have learned in post-secondary public relations course. I do a lot of pitching to media, both online and print, if you can still believe it. I do less influencers than I did at TikTok. And then I do a lot of product announcements currently in my role, working with different stakeholders across the board, very closely with product marketing, and make sure I have a full 360 campaigns in terms of everything from press to demand gen to content to email marketing to social and whatnot. I also handle a lot of executive and crisis and internal communications, less so crisis than other jobs, but there are a few that do pop up. But really, because in the true sense, we are a startup, I think I was employee 250. I am, again, the first PR hire here. So really trying to build the brand, and we're trying to kind of differentiate ourselves in terms of the market. So really trying to work with key external media partners and whatnot to really tell our story and shape our story and really get out what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and similar to Janet, I do a lot of the stuff that I learned in my degree. And so my current role supporting a senior executive team member really just sort of revolves around almost feeling like a bit of this publicist. So a lot of writing, I spend a lot of my day writing. So everything from communications to press releases. There's a lot of back and forth, obviously, as you guys can imagine, with accuracy of language, key messages, and specific verbiage. Working for a large organization, especially a financial institution like TD, involves a lot of learning of the specific tone and the public perception of the company. And so, like I said, a lot of my job is spent sort of chained to my laptop and writing various types of content. In addition to that, supporting various internal aspects of things like compensation communications, executive moves, talent attraction communications, and that sort of thing. I think the one thing that I enjoyed the most about this, and I learned this day one of York comms, like I think it was like called comms 101 or something, was welcome to communications. The first thing you're going to learn is that you wear a lot of hats in this degree, and I truly learned what that meant once I was in the role, because you're kind of juggling a bunch of different things. And so sometimes you're a writer, sometimes you're a publicist, sometimes you're a social media person. Yeah, every day is different.
Interesting, you mentioned communications 101. I was just thinking of that. What I currently do reminds me of that same thing. Writing, more so a lot of revision. As a part of the business team, my role is really to ensure that whatever content is shared regarding the project, it's accurate. It's also advocating for the user, making sure that program information is accurate, meeting with our project team as well as our designers, looking at the UX side of things. Also working with our e-communications team to nail the copy for the external site that the public will actually interface with. There's also change management with the working group, ensuring that our stakeholders and partners, everyone's aware of what is happening, but also making sure that they're prepped in terms of speaking lines, content about the project, so that they can keep employees aware of what we're doing and what's to come. And just as well holding the pen on what types of training needs to take place for the employees who are directly impacted by the project. And yeah, so writing minimally right now, more making sure things are fine-tuned before we launch. So lots of meetings, essentially.
Oh, writing. Yeah, I feel like that's like the little part of the job that everything explodes out of. So like I mentioned before, I wear a bunch of hats, and as a business owner, I feel like my career evolved into becoming a content producer and like running content production. I do that right now through, like I said, the business that I own. I develop, write, and produce film and TV projects and digital media projects for broadcasters, streamers, media outlets. And then I also head up production and comms to really build awareness, clicks, views, the usual, for programs run by Elevate. And Elevate is a nonprofit in the tech space that breaks down barriers to access for capital and community and mentorship for underrepresented entrepreneurs and tech professionals. That's kind of that I get to do both of those together, and really it's all going towards the same cause of really advocating for gender equity and for intersectional gender equity, and really for representation. A lot of the work that I do physically is more on building comms programs and leading content production. So I directed a series of interviews with Venus Williams and Chris Hadfield at a festival that we ran last September. So that kind of came into my job purview in my career in the recent years, which is super cool. But also optimizing comms channels using tech, using AI automation to be able to do my job better, quicker. And then obviously the usual PR, which I actually don't have as much experience with crisis management as a lot of the panelists do, which I just came into recently, which was something very different for me, which is super cool. And then, and really digital marketing. And so that requires a lot of the tech side as well. The common thread in all of my work really is that storytelling aspect, right? And really amplifying underheard, underrepresented voices, stories, ideas through a multi-channel approach, and through all of the channels and community outreach. So that's kind of the day-to-day for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. So now, and maybe some of it was hinted to in some of the past answers, but would really love you to think back on your career and kind of the story that you've had, that arc. What has been the most rewarding part of your career, and what has been the most challenging, so that the students can kind of learn from hopefully your journeys. So again, we'll start with Janet, Leanne, Shireen, and then Zainab. Thanks.
I'd say probably one of the most rewarding aspects of my career that left probably the most significant mark in my like history is working at Shopify. I think after having lived in the States for so long and then helping to really launch and build and take a company public, which is likely maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity, hopefully maybe a couple more times in my career. But I think that was like a very important or historical part of my life. And I feel like I worked very closely with the executive team. Obviously now they're huge. And I think it's like 5,000 people or whatnot. And the PR team is probably likely like 20 people, but it was literally me sitting with the chief marketing officer, Toby, and Harley, who's now the president, and really kind of honing the message. I remember we would all travel together. And so I just think that it's a really nice Canadian tech success story. I think a lot of eyes at the time were on BlackBerry and all the failures and really showcasing. I think we used to always joke that like our hidden secret was that we were Canadian because nobody really understood that. When I started, everyone still called it Spotify all the time. I think still to this day, people make that mistake. But I think that it left such an imprint in my mind. And I think the second part is like, what is the most challenging? I think that working in, so my entire history, like life has literally been in tech startups or tech companies at different stages of growth. And so I think when you're in-house, it's really hard to showcase your ROI. And when you work with software developers and engineers, they literally work on the product, they're shipping features, they're shipping innovations, they have direct ROI into kind of the impact of it has on the business. Even if you're demand gen, you can show how many click-through rates, how many like people signed up due to an email campaign or whatnot. I can't actually do that. So it's a lot of educating internal stakeholders about what you're doing, about what your strategy is. And I actually find it funny because I don't think I can do anybody else's job. I've never touted that, but a lot of people think they can do PR just because they read the news and, they understand what's newsworthy, but it's really trying to kind of educate. Kind of at Shopify, we used to do this round table of what WTF is PR, where we go and we talk about like what we're doing and why we're doing it and why we're here and like what we're trying to help. And it's really about teaching them how they can utilize us as like an internal agency to amplify what they're doing externally.
And piggybacking off of that, Janet, I have a very similar answer, but maybe slightly less traditional. The most rewarding thing for me came out of one of the most challenging moments, which was earlier in my career on the point of ROI. I felt like I was sort of constantly in this position of proving myself and having to really, showcase the worth of communications, especially when you are working for a smaller organization and funding is limited. And so if you're not, in this specific instance, if you're not providing, direct sales into the company as you would in like a marketing position, or you're able to easily analyze that data versus when you're in comms and you're writing a piece. And yes, you can, track click-through rates and readership viewing and whatever. But I was having a hard time explaining how communications work and proving its importance. And so I got this tip from a mentor who still sticks with me until today. And I've said it in past panels. And that's now what I feel like is the most rewarding part of my career. And she said, Leanne, how do you think people find out what happens in the White House? How do we know what's going on? And how do we find out, things through press conferences and whatnot? How do we find out decisions and policies? And she said it's through the press secretary. And so look at yourself as if you are the press secretary. You are the person who has so much control and so much autonomy over the message itself, and you're disseminating this message to people. Naturally, there will be bumps along the way, but without you, it is that the image and the message that the source wants to send out is very hard to send out and perceive that. And so in somewhat less glamorous way to that, she talked a bit about how I should look at myself in that perspective. And I've carried that with me throughout my career, and now I love it. I find that, whenever I'm working on something like a press release as an example, or even something as small as like a social media LinkedIn post, I have that in the back of my head, is what is the message that I'm trying to push out to the external audience, or even the internal audience, because our company has over 100,000 colleagues. And that is at the disposal of your fingertips. And so I think of that every time I find myself sort of stumped in my career.
One of my most rewarding aspects of my career is with comms, you get to sit at many tables. You assist, whether it's a finance team, whether it's a team doing operations, or just on the corporate side, for say, in my career, more for the assistant deputy minister or for director generals. So you get to learn a lot because it informs your writing, it informs how you communicate different mandates for the department with employees or external stakeholders. But it's also challenging in the aspect of you're usually invited later, when really you should have been there from day one for communications. And unlike Janet and Leanne, in public service, it's and especially internal, which is what I've done mostly, internal comms, it's showing that just because you write it doesn't mean people are going to read it, or just because it's on the intranet site that everyone's going to engage with the content. So it's more trying to get especially executives to sort of edit for the audience, and just making sure that, for me, it's more advocating for the user, for the audience, making sure the information is in a digestible form. And it doesn't always go that way, but that's a constant in my career, in my job, is just making sure that whatever is communicated, whether it's in writing, audio, or video, that there's that element where you're actually thinking of the user on the other side.
Shereen, did you want to talk about your challenges? Because I'm eager to know, but I can go ahead if you want.
Oh no, you can go ahead. My challenge was that we get to the table late.
Okay, that's it. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that part. Okay, I was so involved in what you were saying. The audience focus is so incredible. I think if you are to take away anything from today, just know that comms is all about who you're directing your comms to. It's not about your company or who you're representing. In the end, it's really about what they want and what you want people to hear, and how it's going to serve them. One of the most rewarding parts of my role is when I was after building comms plans and content programs for years across industries and all that, I think the most rewarding part of my career was actually finding my true purpose, kind of my true calling, and then marrying that with something that the world needs, that really serves the world. And that's why then it's pure magic. Then I feel like it's lame, but some days it doesn't feel like work, but most days it feels like work. But I think if you're able to find that, for example, like I had mentioned, my commitment to kind of my passion for intersectional gender equity, for representation, and marrying that with my comms background is the best part of my job. So I get to bring more eyeballs to the programs that we're doing. I get to write and build content strategies, and use my data focused mind to actually advocate for women's rights and for more capital for women entrepreneurs and all that through the comms plans that I'm creating. So the more people that are seeing the content and the writing that I'm doing, we're able to pull more people into our ecosystem and teach them and work with them to make it better. And I think that's the thing I love the most about what I get to do. Recently, the crisis comms thing, I recently am supporting, using my skills to be able to bring more attention to the earthquake relief efforts in Turkey and Syria. And so that's a way that I'm able to use what I'm doing now to serve a certain purpose and bring more funding to that area that needs it the most. So those are kind of the things that I've learned it took me a while to learn. So I'm in a different season in my career now, but I think it was that's been the most rewarding. The challenge is a woman of my background, obviously the barriers are plenty, but I do count my blessings and I do count my privilege in so many ways. I made sure that I had to speak louder and pulled up a chair, like I said, at those tables that I wasn't at, and busted down the doors if I could. And that costed me, but those are those barriers. I think the biggest barrier for me was keeping up with the world, keeping up with the changes in the world. What I face the most, especially as journalists and editor, like in the media specifically, if you didn't keep up with technology and you didn't keep up with, and you didn't get into digital media and you were stuck I was a magazine editor. Do you remember what those are? Magazine editors are not anymore. So I was making magazines and doing press releases and Janet even mentioned print, like, can you believe it? And now I'm automating systems to actually publish content on websites and stuff. So had I not kept up with where the puck was going, I would have been left behind. So I think my biggest challenge was consistently keeping my skills sharp and keeping up with it. If I had to go take a workshop or go to school or get mentored or anything like that, and keep up with those resources, I was going to do that, because that was going to be my number one challenge, I think, in this space, and to be able to do the work that I want to do.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for everyone for sharing the successes, the challenges. I think that's the realism that listeners need to hear today, and to hopefully have more follow-up questions. So now what I'll maybe do is stop screen sharing. Now I'll pass it over to everyone listening in, and now you can kind of jump in with whatever questions you would like to ask the panelists. And so you can use the raise your kind of hand feature on the screen, or you can just type your question into the chat and we'll ask on your behalf. So for those listening in, please don't be shy, jump in anytime. I think there's some amazing panelists here that we can probe their brains and kind of get deeper into the successes and challenges. Okay, maybe I'll ask a question while students are thinking. Is there anything, is there a question in the chat?
Yeah. Is it Devon?
Maybe I'm scrolling.
I think the hands up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, jump on in, Devon. Sorry if I can't see you.
Hi, I don't know if you guys can hear me.
You sound great.
You can't?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I really enjoyed hearing everyone's just about everyone's career, and the theme that I noticed is everyone has like a lot of different experiences. So what I really want to know is like, out of all the jobs, I guess, that you had in the beginning of your career, what was like, if you can explain, like, was there a clear pathway to that like very beginner or entry level jobs that you got into? If I mean, I understand like it's always different with every case, but I feel like if you did notice that there was like a clear pathway to an entry level job that you had, I would love to hear about it.
I can help kind of talk about, I guess, my exploration into how I got to where I did. I think like I remember in the Seneca course, people were talking about agency side, and I think a lot of people are scared to lean towards the agency. And I think I might have been the only person that was in the agency, but I felt like it had you're able to get a good grasp of what it's like to project manage up to superiors, but also multitask. And then you likely work in a bunch of different sectors. So you kind of get a taste of where your likes and dislikes are. If like in the beginning of my career, if somebody had told me I was going to be focusing on tech startups, I probably would have laughed and said, definitely not. But that's kind of where I've spent the past 15 years. So I love people with agency backgrounds. I'm kind of biased towards that even when I'm hiring, just because I know what type of experience they train you with, and working with agency partners, I still see that common thread. Usually you start off as like an intern, then you move to an account coordinator, and they usually have like some cyclical type of promotional cycle. And it can be long hours. I think that there's a kind of a bad rap around that because it's not really true. I think if you maybe work in like more consumer, there might be more events and whatnot, but I definitely think that it's totally manageable and you work with a team less than like you're a solo person within a company. So I'm a big fan of like people starting off their PR careers at agencies.
I'd love to jump in with that. Agency was something which was like the third step in my career. I'll be completely frank with you. If I hadn't done, I was a barista at Second Cup, and then I was a customer service rep at Rogers Video. Remember those? I feel like that was like a million years ago. All of them closed down. My learning customer service for me probably continues to help me to this day in my own company when I'm dealing with clients. I'm not saying all of them are difficult, but there are some clients that tend to want a certain thing, and that's how it is. But customer service helped me figure out how to manage those better, and that also translates into team management, and when you become a manager, and when you run your own company. So for me, that was kind of the gateway to be able to learn that properly and do that skill properly, and then be able to transition into agency, because then I was like, okay, so I have to work with people that I don't get or I don't love, and I really need to be brave and do, kind of manage different personalities. And I think that's powerful. And that doesn't necessarily have a comms degree thing. I think that's for all degrees and for all the work that you'll get to do. But yeah, that was kind of my gateway into where I'm going now, or where I am now. So
just add a point to that. I don't think there ever is a clear pathway, especially when you are a student, because to me, the way I think about it is a clear pathway is defined once you have a X amount of experiences, and you only get that through trying different things. And so when I mentioned earlier that I had a couple stints in different industries, I did that for that exact reason, which is, I don't know, do I want to work in agency? Do I want to work in a tech startup? Do I want to work in, do I want to work in government? And so I think trying those things out, although they may seem daunting or scary when you're a student, actually help you in the long run. Because I think when you start, if you are interested in a specific industry while you're a student and think, what, just because I like it, I'm going to go into that, you're actually forbidding yourself from trying other things out, because you think that you have that clear pathway set out for you throughout, for the next 10 or so years of your life. Also in my time, and I hear it's not the same anymore, and I'm very happy for you guys, internships were unpaid when I did them. And so while I was at York, every summer I would do an unpaid internship at a different company. I would find the job postings everywhere, from Facebook to different newsletters that I subscribed to. And so that really helped me, because I was able to work I was able to take internships in various companies every single summer. And so I had 4 that I had throughout my time as a student. And that really helped me, because that told me, what, I really don't like working in news. And I had an internship in that world and tried that out, and that I crossed it off of my list. And so I would just give you that advice, is don't go into this sort of thinking that I have to have a clear pathway come graduation. I don't think that is possible until you actually try.
Shireen, maybe we can get your thoughts too. What was your kind of entry start?
Honestly, similar to Zainab, where it's, I had a call center job where when I was in university, and one of the biggest things, communicating with the clients on the other end of the line, they really went in on that, the listening skills, the paraphrasing and all of that. And what that did for me, and plus, American company, you're in Canada taking calls, you're talking to everyone all over the US. When I joined the government, you're talking to people, coast to coast. And it's the same thing, relationship building. That continues to be that tool that I use. I didn't have a clear path. Leanne mentioned graduation. Oh my gosh. I just knew I needed to finish my degree, honestly. And I was fortunate that when I graduated, that it was easy to find a job. So it's just apply, you started a job. And then if it didn't work out, again, the market was still fairly decent, that you could find another job. And in the past few years, especially during COVID, it's been my relationships that has really directed and connected me to individuals and open up my understanding of what I can do in communications. A lot of people here mention their tech background. Well, tech and digital is still fairly new to government, so trying to get a headway in there. But relationship building, because I truly did not have a plan. I just finished my degree and I knew I needed a job. That was pretty much it.
Okay, great. And there's some good questions in the chat, I think, for you, Shireen, at least the first one. Is any law, knowledge, or experience certification needed to work at Immigration Canada? And then for the second question, how to look out for entry-level jobs when, for example, with my interest in reporting journalism, it's either 5+ or 10+ years of experience in the field is required, or some specific journalism degree, license, etc., are needed that are listed on the job ads. So maybe Shireen, maybe you can speak to the first one then.
I'll speak to the first one. I guess Zainab can grab the second one. So in terms of, like I mentioned earlier, I work with IRCC, but my focus is on the passport program. And to be quite honest, what got me farther in government is the more you know about anything. Once you're in, really, there's so many opportunities as long as you're developing and broadening your network. Specifically, I cannot speak to immigration because I don't work in immigration. I remember saying to my manager last year that if I wasn't working on this project, I probably wouldn't be in the department because my focus wasn't so much immigration or even citizenship. It was really to build this online application, this online portal. So sorry, but a good option to get into government, period, government of Canada, anyways, a federal government, FSWEP. I'll put it in the chat. That's how I got into government. I'll give you a heads up. Do not despair if no one calls you within a few months. It takes a while. It does take some time, but I'll put a couple of links in the chat. But I got in through FSWEP, and from there, different opportunities, I made my way into other departments. So yeah.
That's fantastic, Shireen. And just to clarify, FSWEP, it's essentially like a pool, right? Basically candidates apply and they're kind of in this pool that can be called upon anytime.
Exactly.
Is that the background? Okay.
Fantastic. Exactly. I believe the province has something similar as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then Zainab, maybe you can answer the second question, or anyone else.
Sure. I just don't want to miss Rishma and Tyler's hands, but for media, I think what I learned very, very late was building an online portfolio. I think it's terribly important, even if it's for a university paper or any of your blog posts or anything that demonstrates your writing. Editors are really going to need to see some previous working experience, or at least that you care enough to actually take the time to produce an actual article or something that that shows your style and your voice. I think that was really important. And now that when I hire journalists and writers, to see an online portfolio is actually become a prerequisite. The 5 to 10 years plus experience is a bummer, but I feel like that's all across the board. Everybody's asking for like years and years of experience for different jobs that were entry level before. So, but I would start, if I were you, with an online portfolio, and start kind of writing and publishing that online.
Awesome, thank you. And I apologize, I didn't see the order of hands, but Rishna, maybe we'll start with you and then we'll go to Tyler after.
Sure, no worries, thank you. What a wonderful gathering of wonderful, spirited and professional Panelists, thank you so much. You're very inspiring, and happy International Women's Day to all, and all the men, all the women, and all the everything. Thank you. I wanted to speak about the crisis management that seems to have come up as a theme for a number of you in the work that you provide on maybe a daily basis, and that makes sense. It was a bit of an aha moment, because I'm like, oh wow, but because we aren't really studying, that per se in our degree at this moment, but I can totally see how relevant it is. I wanted to ask you how often that kind of thing comes up, and if that is one of the distinctions between a company hiring a communication specialist, as opposed to their human resources department, or, you know what I mean? And also just considering communications as a position is a little bit newer. When I was first in this program in 1997 ish, or 95, mass communications was all about journalism, on air, that kind of job, and advertising. And now I'm coming around and I'm seeing that we can also proceed, as many of you have, in the job sector of like companies and being a intermediary and whatnot. And so that's what I'm interested in, is being a communicator, not necessarily going back on air, but maybe, and not going to post-grad for PR. Like I though, Janet, I totally see how that has completely armed you with so much to go forward with, and also your passion for agency and advertising. But for me, being in the program, I'm like, the advertising thing is part of the problem, and that's just my view, right? I'm in the thick of the program right now, right? So I want to ask so there's a couple of questions here, but one of them is, how often does the communication crisis management come up for you in your work as a worker in what you do? And secondly, if there was a post-grad for me, what would that be for any of you? For you, Leanne, I would just say, what would be a typical day for you, if you could, or if a few of you could answer that? That would be great.
Yeah, I'm happy to take your first question too about the crisis comms, because I feel like I deal with that on the daily. I think the short answer is it's extremely hard to predict when crisis will arise. And I think we all learned that COVID was the crisis of all crisis. And so you kind of, I think if you're speaking from a point of like looking for a job where that's something that they're asking for, or it's an expectation of the role, I think what the hiring manager is really looking for is for someone who's agile, who's nimble, who's resilient. Those are skills that, when a crisis does arise, in the workplace, they come in various sizes, right? The big ones, when we think of something like a pandemic, is pretty massive. But like an example of a small crisis that I dealt with yesterday in my job was the executive I supported was meant to speak for an International Women's Day event. They switched gears and had him do a different role. And so while that may not be seen as a crisis, it was in the sense that we had to rejig the entire script in an hour. And so I think that is one way to look at it from like a crisis perspective. I don't know that it's like it's like an actual emergency, but again, they come in various shapes and sizes. So I would just kind of tackle that that way. I also think, when I think of the larger issues that we deal with, there's depending on the field that you want to specialize in. If you are interested in media relations, as an example, issues management is something we deal with on the daily. And so what is being said about the company that you work for in the news? What type of response do you need to give back to the reporter? Is there a follow-up? If they're not satisfied with the response, is there a scandal to follow that? And so I think it's, just reinforcing that they come in different shapes and sizes, but depending also on the company that you work for, that would sort of fluctuate. And then your question to me specifically was about what my daily job looks like, right?
Yeah, which is something that you've answered to some extent.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to mention though is I know you said that you weren't too keen on the Seneca postgrad. I did take it, and I highly recommend it. Mostly because, and I didn't go into agency, so totally different experience than Janet's. But I highly, highly recommend it because it takes all the learnings that you took away at York in your BA and makes them extremely tactical. There is also a strategic element to it, but you learn skills that can apply in whatever type of comms role you take, whether internal comms, government, investor relations, PR, etc. And so I urge you to rethink that a little bit. The courses are pretty high level in the sense that you can, like I said, you can kind of narrow your field wherever you see fit. But there is also a lot of crisis comms there if that is something that you're interested in. They teach you a lot about that.
I'm glad to hear that from you. That's great, because you didn't go in that direction. You didn't go into agency. Well, you did, but you've ended up where you are. And I think that that's great to know that that PR program could work for me, even if that's not my direction. Thank you.
Okay, Tyler, thanks so much for your patience. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My question is directed to all of the panelists. I'd like to know how all of you prioritize and maintain your mental health within your jobs, and lastly, if your companies provide benefits that promote the well-being of their employees.
Okay, I think I'll start the ball rolling on that. So I work for the government of Canada, and that's a part of our benefits. We have, I think most companies do offer employment assistance program, EAP. So that's confidential. It's a third party, so it's a separate arm from the government. So there's no interaction between your employer and what you may discuss with your counselor. As well as a part of our benefits, we have I'd say pretty generous in terms of leave. There's also leave specific to personal versus your vacation, and a number of issues, a number of opportunities, and as well, day to day with your manager. I've been in situations where I've had some pretty good managers where on a daily basis you can adjust. 2020, when suddenly the world shut down, and for most government of Canada employees, we never worked from home. So now you're working virtually, looking at a screen. There's so much happened as a Black woman, so many things that happened. George Floyd being killed and all of that. And I'm happy to say that the management team I worked for, they were very open and honest in the communications and interaction, making space available to discuss certain matters. But as well, again, there's always that EAP program at any point, at any time that you need to reach out, you can do that. And it's a big mandate for the government. So there's constant in terms of wellness support that's shared year round with employees. So yeah.
I can speak to marketing specifically. We live and breathe the numbers of our campaigns. So that can get exhausting. And I honestly, while I would love to say that you can rely on companies for a mental health break or the understanding of a team leader, sometimes it's not practical, or it's just, some companies just are moving too fast that they haven't prioritized that. And that's unfortunate. It's getting better, but I feel that the way that you need to do it is really to shut things down and shut things off. And for some of us, we feel like we have to overcompensate, specifically for women, we feel like we are always overshowing our work because our work is not always getting recognized on the first go. And so I feel your pain and I feel that, but we need to continue to kind of, it's never going to be enough. So you need to figure out when you're like I got burnt out after our big festival last year, our conference last year, and I needed to kind of shut it down and say, okay, you know what? I got to take this vacation. I'm useless for anybody on this team. I got to go. And that was almost impossible for me to do because I don't like to quit, but I can't see it as that. We can't see it as quitting. We have to now prioritize our mental health. I think it's more important than everything else, especially with the work we do. The crisis management side is a completely different ballgame. Things are happening on your news feed. When you want to shut down, you're going on Instagram and you're seeing crises in all areas. So I really think that kind of shutting everything down and you having to be courageous and brave enough to say, this is enough, I can't do this, is something that you'll learn and that you need to learn, or I hope you learn early. Otherwise, you're not going to be useful for yourself, for your family, for your community, and especially not for your job. So I wouldn't rely, like I said, I know it's a doomsday way of looking at it. I wouldn't rely on corporations or organizations. I would definitely make sure that I have my own coping mechanisms. And then it's a guaranteed bonus to have you have a great manager and a team leader and a great organization that gets it. That would be my 2 cents on that one.
A great question. One that definitely wouldn't have thought about, but yeah, especially for the panelists, like you said, Zainab, it's hard to turn off because that's almost like your world that you're working in day to day. So I just want to go back to the chat because I apologize, Jade. I know you've been patient as well. You asked a question. Janet, maybe you're the best one to answer this one. What kind of experience did you need or have to qualify for these agencies at an entry level for PR specifically?
I don't actually, I'm trying to remember. I think my first agency was actually in investor relations and not PR. And so I switched over to a PR agency, but I think that typically, like Leanne had mentioned, more around internships, I think are really important. I feel that you can easily get into an internship at some of these agencies, and from there you can go into more of a permanent role in terms of an account coordinator. I think everyone, correct me if I'm wrong, on the panel did take the postgraduate corporate comms. I think that that's an entryway because there's a lot of job boards throughout. I think I remember I got my internship. My internship was at Much Music. But I think that while I was doing that internship, there was other internships that was connected through the Seneca job board that'll connect you to the direct agencies because they kind of go direct to a lot of those schools, knowing that they have a pool of candidates that are actually looking for it. And I think that, yes, I think it is mandated that they are paying now, which is nice. I think I got like a weird stipend at the end of it, but I do think that being connected to your network, and I think like when we were doing it, there was no LinkedIn or I think it was like Monster. I don't even know, but now that there's more kind of networking, and I feel that I think someone had mentioned mentors, like finding somebody who also has experience in the space and has been a long time, because they're probably very well connected to it. But I do think getting that like work and using the existing networks, even at York, I'm sure some of the alumni services can connect you to different agencies. I think that's kind of the best way. And then there's obviously always just kind of emailing direct and really tailoring your resume for the job that you're looking for.
Awesome. Thanks, Janet. And then Quentin had a question, which I saw Shireen answered, but thought I'd bring it out for the rest of the panelists too. So some of you guys mentioned you had to learn new skills to keep up with innovation. Innovation. Did you guys learn those skills within your jobs, or did you go back to school or mentors courses, etc.? So Shireen had mentioned that it was both internal training on the job as well as postgrad studies and mentorship. I know, Zainab, I think you had mentioned the importance of kind of staying up with like the pace of technology and digital skills. I don't know if you can comment for the students now that are going through school, like what are some of those skill sets or resources that you would recommend?
I get that question all the time, and I always blank on that question. Like, what are the resources, or how do you upskill yourself? For me, it was very much on the job training, but I know that's not helpful when you're graduating. And so what I would so for writers, you need to continuously be writing. You need to be practicing your writing at all times. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but an online portfolio is going to do you good. Even if you don't think that what you've done or anything you've written, even if it's like a LinkedIn article or something like that, isn't, you don't want to share it, or you don't think it's worthy of sharing, please do. Please put yourself out there. Even the smallest thing, write a LinkedIn, if you're already doing this, please don't listen to me, but like LinkedIn post that has your own opinion on a certain tech trend or a certain trend in your industry that you care about or something that you truly are passionate about. I want you to start a social media campaign where you're actually writing on different channels and getting a sense of, you're starting to get the sense of the data, like, oh, and on Instagram, this did really well with this group that I pushed out. Oh, on LinkedIn, this did really well when I mentioned this hashtag or something like that. That way you're getting into the habit of testing your content, because that's such a big part of the role. And so I felt like if I wasn't doing, then I wasn't learning. I couldn't afford to take classes or take another degree or anything like that. And I honestly had to put together a whole presentation to do a design diploma through my company, and they paid for it. So keep in mind, if you really want something and you can't afford it and you're working with a company, you need to have a business case, and they may have opportunities where they can pay for your upskilling. So that's one. FYI, Upwork. I don't know if anyone knows about Upwork. You have to make sure that you put in your Canadian tax information there, because I know it's an American company if you're working with American companies. But Upwork, you can get a lot of freelance jobs for people in comms or people who write or people who do design and stuff. So that's a way that you can build your skills. But honestly, in this job, all I feel like is if you have to be doing the things that you're going to be doing to be able to upskill yourself. So if you want to learn something, I mean, Coursera.com has everything you need for free to be able to upskill yourself. Nowadays, it's easy. Like Janet was mentioning, like we didn't have any of this stuff. So we had to pay, or we had to take the time or anything like that. And then also the mentorship program. Tammy, do you want to plug?
Yes,
yours?
absolutely. So I think for the panelists, you might have remembered it as TASTE, which was the alumni sort of student mentorship program. We've sort of rebranded as career mentoring program. And so maybe when we have the recording, maybe I can do a sample like follow-up email for the students, Rob, and we'll plug the mentorship program. I'll of course invite the panelists if they're interested in joining that mentorship program, they can. But I agree, Zainab, it's a great opportunity for students to kind of connect one-on-one and start that dialogue. No, fantastic, thank you. And I saw another, and I realized we're going over time. So panelists, if you have to go, we completely understand and are so grateful for you to be here today. But if people want to stay in a couple of extra minutes, I saw that, I think was it Sabrina might have asked a question in the chat. So this question is a little general, but what is the best advice you can give to somebody who wants to be a better communicator, specifically in oral skills? How did you get more eloquent and able to quickly think about things to say? Great question. I don't know if anyone wants to take that on.
I think it's, I would say it's similar to what Zainab mentioned in terms of your writing. It's just practice. Take advantage of any opportunity, however small, to speak in front of a group, to speak into, for school, if there's an opportunity to do a presentation, jump on that, volunteer. Because depending on your program, like I was an English major, I did more writing than speaking. So it was in my part-time jobs where there's an opportunity to be a part of, I don't know, an employee group or whatever, just taking advantage of any opportunity. And the beautiful thing, those are low risk. It's not your job is on the line, it's more you're volunteering your time. So any opportunities and every opportunity, whether small or large, to engage and speak openly, take it. Best.
Something I used to do all the time when I was a student to improve my public speaking was I would always read out my assignments, or if I was writing an email to a professor or whatnot, I would always read it out loud and as if I was presenting it. Might sound super cheesy, but it actually really helped me because also when you write something, when you write for it to be read and when you write for it to be said is very different. And so being able to write in a way where that could work both ways is a skill that takes a lot of time. So I would say something simple and free that you could do is treat everything like a presentation. And sometimes if it's just your mirror in front of you, that can work.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, I just want to say on behalf of the Career Center, on behalf of the Department of Communication and Media Studies, thank you so much for all the panelists today, for sharing your career journeys. I hope for the listeners, it's given a broad viewpoint of the different career pathways you could go into and the amazing journeys that are not always linear in this wonderful field of communications and media studies. So just thank you so much. So proud to have such an accomplished, strong, powerful lineup of speakers today for International Women's Day as well. And yeah, I think Zainab, thank you so much for sharing your LinkedIn in the chat. We'll send out the recording and just want to thank everyone, all the students for coming out today, because I know you have busy schedules as well. So just want to say thank you for coming. Rob, any final thoughts from your side?
Yeah, just to echo that, to say thanks so much. And I loved Sabrina's question, because I was also sitting there thinking like, wow, what a bunch of like smart and articulate and eloquent and brilliant people there that we have here. And so it was really wonderful to hear everybody, and we really, really appreciate you coming out, and the students as well. Hopefully this was something that really got you thinking. And just to flag one thing is that I'm always telling students that, you know, writing is going to come in handy someday. So hearing, I think Leanne and Janet, I think it was, or Zainab maybe, who was talking about the importance of writing, that was great to hear. So thanks, I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful International Women's Day, and to the allies as well on the call. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.